Hey Kelly, how are you?
How are you?
Good. So we got, okay, yeah, we can wait a few minutes. Chris, can you hear us? Are you able to, here, let me see if I can unmute him.
He was coming a few minutes later.
Yes, I can.
Excellent. We don't have a quorum right now, so we're just gonna give it a few minutes to see if anybody else comes in, but. We do have Greg here and we do have Kelly and Kelly from the Outdoor Discovery Center who are ready to present, so it wouldn't be an official meeting, but. We could still hear from everybody. Nope.
Yeah, he always showed up for the wildlife meetings and everything, so.
We're one closer to a quorum.
If only Holly.
If only Holly.
I still have a tag somewhere. Traffic coming from Grand Rapids.
Then maybe she, on her way, that would be great.
That's a good dress for the open house.
Oh, this is so nice.
For great space.
Isn't it cool? I think you're better this week.
There's more stuff coming in, yeah.
So today we did a punch list free. Tomorrow we'll do the second punch list walk. It'll be about 3.5 hours. We're gonna be done probably a little bit sooner.
Good.
This week I'll start moving because of the weather. Just getting things into the base at least. It's
It's a lot though. The police department and all of your.
all of our stuff, yeah, I told,
Operation.
yeah, well, at least all the desks and stuff. you
Yeah,
know.
to get their spaces set up.
So they're leaving the garage, they're staying in the garage, they're keeping the
Okay.
garage for now, they're just gonna have offices there, so they really don't have a lot. Maybe some files, you know, things like that, but it was a good time to purge though.
Just.
Chief was so funny.
Like the gems in there.
Oh, man, he goes, yeah, no, we put that someplace to like 15 years ago. I said, yeah, because I got them out there for me. You know, but yeah, it was our last Halloween, you know, like, safety meeting, it was kind of, you know, sad, you know, but we.
So-
Great space.
Yeah, this is not, it wouldn't be a meeting, but, you know, we don't have a quorum, but so there can't be, you know, there's not gonna be minutes, there can't be any motions. But we can certainly hear from whoever's here.
Yeah.
So if that's amenable to everybody else.
We could just do, so yeah, new business that have reports, so it's been bad tape if anybody wants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're gonna record, right? So yeah.
Yeah, the other, it's recording right now.
Okay, good.
So let me, so we have Greg up first.
Yep.
Yeah. Perfect. All right, Greg, we don't have an official meeting, but we can hear from you.
Well, I'll be unofficial then.
Awesome.
Well, I was out of the office for about 3 weeks in last month, so I haven't done a ton of stuff, but what I do want to talk about is
Here, let me just make sure this is on for the recording.
do you mind? Oh, thank you very much. That works everywhere. I don't know.
I like that.
The whole, you know, I'm here all week. Try the pork chops. Excellent. Very good. So we've been looking at, we started this conversation a few months ago, about like, what can we do to help? We talked, obviously, the big things, the super fund cleanup, we did a bunch of research, it's all coming, it's just not coming soon. So that's probably 5 to 8 to 10 years down the road to see some of that stuff happening, so. We know it's out there and it'll be hugely beneficial and we should continue to prepare for it, but let's not wait for 10 years. And that actually led me to think about just how fast time passes, because that seems like a very long time. And then I was thinking, well, we wrote the harbor management plan. And I was looking at the date. And let's see here, there was a mayor of Saugatuck in 2016, I can't remember her name. Let's see, I think she's labeled in here in the study. Let's see, Chris Peterson.
Yeah. As I said, nothing's changed.
So one of the things I want to suggest, I was going through and listening, okay, what are the action steps we can take? Okay, we've got things that we can do, and we've been talking about different things, so. Simple things that popped up recently, this whole conversation about the invasive species grant. And there's all this, everything's gonna revolve around funding, and as a group here, we need to decide, okay, what are actions that we can take as an organization and actively manage issues, and to some extent, there's the small things like the navigation and the buoys and the no-wake zones and stuff like that, but the big fundamental issue that we have in the lake is always gonna be contamination until that's cleaned up, and once that's cleaned up, it's gonna continue to be the water levels and the management of the dredging and the economic impacts on both communities, all the communities, of those sorts of things, so, we talked about engaging DNR Waterways Commission to make ourselves eligible for state funding. And I was going back through the study, and what I want to do is I'm going to actually send the harbor management plan to Dan. I want you to all see it. If you're having trouble sleeping, it's not very long, it's about 25 pages and then a bunch of appendices. But it outlines so many of the things that I think that you're still thinking about, and we did a bunch of work on it. And so probably that's a huge, let's take a look at that. What I'm gonna recommend is like, what should we be doing next is let's take a look at that plan, go through it again and go, okay, most of it's still valid. Now, what happened is when we wrote in 2016, we had just come out of 2013 record low waters and we were on our way up to record high waters. And the conversations we had are the worst thing that could happen is we'll have a long period of high water and everybody will forget that the water is gonna come back down someday and we won't think about it again until the water's low and now we're in emergency. And it takes us a year to get a permit and funding and financing. So the harbor management plan did address a lot of different things. That addressed the biggest issues we have with the dredging is the cost. And so there was a study all the way back in 2007 that came up with a $40 or $50 million number, which of course everybody went, okay, it's so big, we're not even gonna think about it because we can't do anything about it. It's like climate change. What can I do? It's too big, I'm not coming to step back. So we went through the process of breaking that down into smaller pieces and said, okay, we're gonna define a smaller area. What's the minimum area we can keep navigable boating working? And we did that. And then we said, what are the ways that we can reduce the cost of dredging from $40 or $50 a cubic yard down to maybe $10 a cubic yard? In the process, we got it to something in the $4 to $10 million range, which, while still a large number, at least entered the realm of possibility. And that's what this plan did. So what I think would be really valuable for us in terms of future next steps is to go back through this plan. And maybe what I'll do between now and the next meeting is come back and say, I'm gonna summarize it into key bullet points and outline key points about strategically, what do I think would be effective for you guys, is to say, we've already done it. All the regulatory bodies, with Douglas and Saugatuck, we're behind this notion of we need a long-term strategy to address this so that we're not in crisis mode when it goes back down, and it will. Good news, all the weather projections for this winter so far are for an epic winter, which is generally good for water levels. If you like 2013 or 2014 or 14 and 15, if you like or didn't like those winters, they were good for the lake levels. So that looks like what we're gonna have, which means it'll probably be 70 degrees in February. All the predictions right now seem to be focused on this idea that it's gonna be an epically cold winter. All the setup is very much like 2013-14. So maybe that'll buy us a little time. And there is no reason to believe that because the water levels peaked and are trending downward, that they're gonna keep going down in some record though. If you look at the 120 years of records, it could just as easily turn and go back up, or it could stay reasonably in this level for 5 years. But I guess I'm gonna encourage you, it's the same conversation we've had, is now is the time to get the strategy in place so that when it does start to do those things, we can get there. So that's gonna be a couple of different things. One, the question everybody's gonna ask you in the public is, well, how are you gonna pay for any of this? And why should I have to be part of paying for something? So to me, that's going to be a conversation about addressing the economic impacts. Ultimately, if we lose the body of water, it doesn't just impact the marinas. It doesn't just impact the Butler. It impacts the whole communities, and we can show that. We did that in the study, and what might be worthwhile is to revisit some of these things and update some of these numbers, and I'll make some specific recommendations. But before I do that, I think it would be helpful for all of you to just, I'll send it to you, take a look, read it, it's not that long, and it outlines all the strategies that I think are valid for you. So the other things, I guess that's really what I have for you tonight, is that's a recommendation of what we should do next. Is there anything you guys wanted me to do on this, like in the invasive species grant? There's something I could help with that. There was a conversation about it. Should the communities work together to submit that? And I don't think this organization was in the lead of that application, but is there an update on that?
These folks, right?
Is that it? So, perfect.
Are we talking about the invasive species grant? So that's due November first.
Okay, yep.
So we have our letters of recommendation in, so thank you very much. And the grant writer that sits, so ODC Network is gonna be the lead on that. So he's got all of it put together as far as the boilerplate, and so he's just going back through with our conservation group and sort of going through the fine details of it, and then that'll be submitted.
If there's anything, sorry, to interrupt.
Sorry.
Who's putting it together?
So ODC Network is the lead on that. So that's as part of the Kalamazoo Greenway, which we're gonna talk about tonight. So in part, bringing all these different entities together. So that'll be the 3 municipalities here, and then Fenville's also part of that.
If there's anything in the criteria, like the review criteria about economic stuff or anything like that, there might be supporting data that exists here that you can
Great.
pull it out and go, as in this study, oftentimes what I find in grants is, can you demonstrate the plan that said this is necessary for these other things?
Yeah.
So if it would be helpful, if your grant writer wants to give me a call, and we can at least brainstorm what they've got. I might have data and supporting studies. I've done so many studies for both Douglas and Saugatuck and the authorities that it's out there, and oftentimes if you can demonstrate that there's some broader plan that you're facilitating, that sometimes helps you get points.
Yep.
I'll give you my card.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. We just went through the rubric earlier this week, so.
It's informal.
Oh, okay, okay. I see. So I just have a question, I haven't seen that yet, the study that you're talking
Yeah.
about.
It's
my-
2016, I'm like,
Right,
how did
right.
10 years go by?
Sure, sure. So just to the committee, I'm wondering, and certainly this is just maybe discussion for the next meeting, but we want to keep things moving along. Certainly. Would it be, is it a study, and again, not looking at it yet, but is this a study where maybe we could have a member from each community work with Greg on the side to keep some, to try to pull out some of the key factors to try to, because Greg, I think you know each of our communities pretty well, but I mean, maybe getting some of the committee members involved a little bit in ownership of trying to create some sort of guidance of what each of our communities might want to look at and extract from that plan and focus on as a committee moving forward. Maybe that's a way to do it, so that Greg has some good guidance from each, Douglas, Saugatuck and Saugatuck Township, just a thought. Because things have changed certainly since 2016 quite a bit. But just trying to, maybe move some of these conversations and discussions forward as we enter into 2026 and try to figure out the priorities of grant funding and focuses and things like that, just expediting it a bit.
Yeah, the quick overview of this is, the plan, purpose, and the goals and objectives. The goals and objectives is keep a functioning navigable lake that supports all these economies and of course, water quality and all those sorts of things. The sediment manages the big deal, and it's, we have a bunch of strategies. And some of those strategies are getting the Eagle to recognize, for example, that there are other ways to manage the cost of sediment. And if we can find a way to more cost effectively clean up and dredge and excavate this contaminated stuff, it'll happen faster, which should be a good thing. So I think that's a conversation we could have. But it's always going to come back to funding, and a conversation we had back then, this notion of, is there, call it a rainy day fund, it's a lack of rain fund when we start to lose our water levels, but can we start to establish sort of a harbor maintenance trust fund, for lack of a better term? That's the harbor maintenance trust fund, if you've heard that phrase before, that's the Corps of Engineers budget to manage dredging everywhere. We need something like that locally for Kalamazoo Lake Harbor Authority for these communities, because we're not getting that kind of support. Now, fortunately, the word of bill that did pass did give the Corps funding for all harbors. That was really bad for a few years. This is back in 1450. So that's actually good. That unlocks some funding. But fundamentally, you need to be able to rely on yourselves for it. And so on the one side of it, on the engineering side, is reducing the cost by going down all those strategies to reduce the cost. The other side of it is we're gonna have some kind of funding. So how do we start to put that together? And as elected officials, that anything that starts to attempt to raise funds is gonna raise lots of questions and takes a long time. So I think that, to me, would be a practical thing to think about, is how do you start to, what is a reasonable assessment? Is there some kind of a tiny little, like the hotel tax or whatever, that's just say this, having funds to manage and maintain this navigable harbor is absolutely critical to the economic success of these communities. And if we don't build a long-term funding plan, we're gonna be in a crisis mode and may have real issues. So that, to me, I don't know how you get there, but
How, have you visited with other communities that have been able to do that and gotten money for dredging through any of the different grants that are out there?
the grant funding is typically, what happened in 13 was the state pulled the funding of all their capital funding for all the harbor projects that they typically do. They pulled all that funding, it's about $30 million, and they said it's all emergency dredging this year. And so that's what the state did in 13, and you didn't get any of that money because you didn't have any state facilities at the time. I did notice, I was reading in here that we did get, it was DEQ at the time, we did get them to acknowledge
Permission?
that Coughlin Park is a
Okay.
state facility and therefore should have unlocked funding for you.
Mhm.
Now,
That's a good,
those people are gone,
yeah.
but that's a big deal. We need to get that back alignment there. So, I need to spend some more time with South Haven, what they did. They went through a similar situation in South Haven. St. Joe and other places have enough commercial shipping and the federal nav channel is big enough that it covers most of their needs. They had to focus on like for their marina, West Basin Marina, for example, and that was easier because they got waterways funding for that. So I think that would be a valid thing to do is how are the other communities doing it? Most of them have a grant aid facility that is unlocking that state funds and we need to. Again, I still think engaging with Waterways Commission to make sure that they know you exist and matter and should be eligible for that funding, but again, we can't rely on it because the state might not do that.
How would we let them know that? I mean, do you need to apply for a grant or?
That would be part of it. So what happened in the grant funding program? The gentleman who ran the program for many, many years, Paul Peterson, passed away a couple of years ago. Probably the kindest and most genuinely good human I've ever worked with in the state government. Amazing guy. He passed. The new guy's Kurt Wemple, also a very good guy, but he's learning. But we've had a lot of turnover, so a lot of those folks might not remember any of these conversations. The next Waterways Commission meeting is on December 2 in Lansing. It's the kind of thing that if a single representative went to just, hey, we're from here and we're interested, and just want to let you know that we're here. We'd like to talk about engaging with Kurt Wemple about boating access site. So they call a boat ramp a boating access site. And they generally like to spend more money on boating access sites than marinas because a boating access site actually supports a lot more people than just a marina. And you have at least Schultz Park, Douglas has the one near Red Dock, Saugatuck. But I don't know if any of those, the Saugatuck one, is that actually in state funding there right by the
By the old Spears by the Star?
Yeah.
Yeah, but all the,
So it might be worth our time to just poke this bunny a little bit and say, we want to get some state funding to improve this boating access site. And get this to become a designated grant aid funded boating access site. And get ourselves on the map,
Schultz is owned by the state.
right?
yeah, so, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we just maintain it, so that's why we can collect money for launch, because we have to use it towards the
Yeah.
maintenance of it, but we've been talking about trying to get the state to, give that to the city, but it's fallen on the wayside.
Yeah, it's almost better if they don't give it.
Yeah.
We should think that through. I guess that's part of the question is.
Because you're right, then we can kind of say, hey, you own this, but I also don't want to jeopardize any funding that the city has to.
What we want is grant aid funding.
Yeah,
And so grant aid funding, West Basin Marina in St. Joe is owned by the city of St. Joseph, but they get grant aid funds, which pays for about half of the cost of all their improvements.
yeah.
We're getting grants for Beaver Island to do a preliminary engineering study to renovate the marina, which is about to collapse.
Mhm.
And so, a conversation might be, hey, we have this boat ramp that is no longer in good working order, it's not ADA compliant, it's not safe, we want to renovate it and make it more accessible, we're gonna apply for grant aid funding for you to help us make this, bring it up to current standards.
Mhm.
And solve some things, like paddlecraft access, things like that. So that might be a good strategy and a good reason to engage with them in good faith about, hey, we're trying to meet your goals about creating access to the waterways and oh, by the way, it does make us a grant aid community and next time there's an emergency, we want to be on your list. Grant aid communities that potentially unlocks funding. And I think that's a realistic approach. They're not gonna want to buy a marina, they're not gonna want to build a marina. They're not, we wrote the statewide facility assessment of all of the grant aid funded marinas and boating access sites. And in big round numbers, it's about $650 to $750 million of a budget shortfall of capital funding. excuse me, not a budget shortfall, that was the total cost of capital funding over the next 20 years to maintain the existing system. Big number, they only had funding for about half that. And so there was this big $300 million, but now we did come up with a bunch of strategies to help them. Basically by just simply modernizing the licensing fees and addressing the cost of living increases since the last time they raised fees on voters. Solved almost all of it. We got more than like $50 million. So my point in bringing that up is they're not looking for more things to have, but if we've got existing facilities and maintaining them and maintaining access, making them safe, making them serve more people is certainly within their target criteria. So I would encourage that.
So do you think we should send somebody then? Would that be you? Would we have?
I can't, I normally go on, my whole team is, it's overlapping with two conferences. It's funny, the Waterways Commission meeting is on the same day that the Michigan Boating Industry Association is having their recreational boating education conference. So all of the marina people are already at a conference in another place on that day, so it's not ideal. But I think it's probably better for us to get a strategy together. It never hurts to get them to know who you are, but I think it's probably better, let's talk to Kurt Wemple and say, let's identify what's the target boat launch we want to focus on as an improvement somewhere in the community, in the harbor. And then talk about that strategy and then talk with Kurt. Any application for any type of grant funding is always due on April 1 to DNR, so we have some time. But that's the only time you can submit, so if it's not April 1 of 26, it'll be April 1 of 27. So I think that would be worthwhile to look at that and say, hey, we need to make this improvement to this place.
What's the specific grant program called?
It's waterways, it's the Michigan DNR waterways recreational boating
Yeah.
grants. So, but I'm happy to, I'll just hop on the phone with Kurt and just chat with him and go, hey, Kurt, we got this situation, we've got this ramp, we need to improve it. What do you think? He loves to chat about me. You don't want to be asking Kurt this question on March 15.
Mhm.
He wants to know, he likes to know about all the grant applications that are coming his way months in advance. Because it's a lot of work on his part, on the far end. So. But those are the big broad strategies that I think are super valid because fundamentally anything big it's always going to come back to funding. And so I think we need to focus. I think it would be helpful for you to focus on as many funding streams as we can possibly identify, as many grant streams, but we do need to think about some way to have some kind of a local fund for some kind of a trust fund for when we will inevitably have to fund dredging past the federal nav channel. So, and or if the federal nav channel funding runs out, we don't have Fred Upton anymore. That he was phenomenal. He got all kinds of money. We're still getting the money. It's still happening, but without Fred, he was something. He really had it dialed in. So those are the strategies that I think would be most effective to get in place and get established, because it'll probably take several years, and hopefully we have that much time to be ready for it.
Did you mention that we need to identify a specific launch that?
If we're gonna ask for some money, we should identify a project and state, this is the project, this is the ramp we want to improve, this is our target. So I haven't checked and I haven't looked at this. What's the condition of Schultz right now?
It exists. I don't know, I mean, what are the stipulations? I guess it's a question to them if they own it, because the state, like when a lot of times when you're applying for these grants, they say we need to know ownership, we need to have your documents on all of that. So that could work against us, because we don't own, we own the park, we just don't own the lawn.
So I'm gonna recommend we identify 2 launches. Schultz should be one of them, and I can ask her, okay, we think you own this one, but it needs these improvements. How does that, is this a grant thing or is this a separate thing? Because it may simply be, yes, we use our own grant program to do our own stuff.
Mhm.
That may be their internal funding mechanism, which is fine.
Which is fine, yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. Or we can also say, we have that one here and we have this other one here that we want to improve for these reasons to create this access. And so, for example, Douglas has
Union Street, yeah.
yeah, it has a great paddlecraft, well, but you've got the great paddlecraft access site, for example. So one of the big things that came up in the DNR facility assessment is the biggest conflict that's evolved at all the boating access sites is the paddlecraft car toppers. There's real conflict between the guys with the trailers and the people coming in with paddlecraft. Because most of our boating access sites don't have parking for regular cars, it's all car and trailer parking. And so once the car toppers show up and they start taking those spaces, I mean, there have been incidents requiring police intervention.
Can only imagine.
And not unreasonable, but here's the frustrating part. I always have to look at both sides. If I'm a voter with my trailer, I have paid a significant amount of money for my license, for my registration and gas taxes. So I'm funding the construction of these boating access sites. If I'm a car topper, they have worked very, very hard to make sure that there is no registration requirement for kayaks and paddleboards and canoes. So they're not paying anything into the system to fund these access sites. That was one of the things that we recommended in the studies. That's not okay. If I have to pay $8 or whatever to put a sticker on my tiny little 8-foot long sailboat for my kids, or on my sunfish, then it's reasonable, and it's $8. We're not talking about an enormous amount of money. Well, it's 6 kayaks, I'm like, I have 3 sailboats. Are you gonna tell me I shouldn't? Yeah, so to me, that was a strategy. They were working on it. Whether that's actually been implemented, but the point there would be is everything has to have some kind of support. And so one of the things that we can look at is certainly the popularity of car topping and paddleboards and kayaks has gone way, way, way up in the last 10 years. And it's created these conflicts. So that might be a thing that we can address specifically as, here's a problem we were trying to fix. We're having conflicts at Schultz with those people, where conflicts are there. So we want to create more access over here. Douglas has already gone ahead and built the paddlecraft access. At this point, maybe there's a need for one in Saugatuck. And maybe we, so these are strategies that are gonna fit into the broader view of how DNR thinks about recreational boating access, and I would think are valid uses of requests for grant need funding to support that.
Well, as Greg probably knows a little bit, we talked about it, Union is gonna be a big problem, Union Street Boat Launch for the city moving forward. We're extending the dock, putting a better dock in, we're putting riprap, I always wanna call it riprap, but riprap in, and we're doing a lot of work there, as soon as Eagle gives us all of our stuff, but we don't own that parking area, that's owned by a private person. So he's now wanting 10 feet of that to come out and then a few more feet. So any of that angle parking, we've had to shrink the size of boats that are able, so you see all those red flags and things like that, because we've had to shrink the size of boats that are allowed to launch there because the trailers can't go out into the road. And so unfortunately, as we angle and we angle and we angle, we're gonna run out of room at some point. So we've got a big issue with parking down there. It may just be you can launch here, but you gotta go find your own parking at some point. So I don't know what's gonna happen with Union Street Boat Launch, with what's going on with that.
And as we write the standards for updated standard for boat ramp design, we're actually, I'm helping write ASCE Manual 50, which is the national engineering standard for how we build recreational boating facilities. The parks business have to get bigger because you can't even buy an F-150, that's not 24 feet long anymore. And so we used to build them 45 feet long, and now they're approaching 55 foot as the standard length, and in some cases 60 feet. It's getting silly because they'll have an extended cab with the this and that, and the truck's at least 22 feet, and then you get the tongue and the tandem and the whole bit. So Union Street's eventually, it's just not gonna be a viable place for that kind of launching.
No.
It's gonna be, you can dump your boat and go away, but you're not.
That's right. You're not gonna park there.
Where are
at
you
some
gonna
point.
park? Yeah.
And that is a problem for us. So those two launches, state owns one and the other one's gonna have parking issues. So if anybody wants to have any launch somewhere, I'm more than welcome.
Yeah. Does Safe Harbor own that? They own the parking lot.
Not that parking lot, it's
Joe Malakas.
Mr. Yes, Mr.
Has anybody approached him about selling?
He wants to do something there, so we're not sure what, so he is not interested.
Parking lot by the red.
I've had him say he wanted to sell in the past.
That dirt spot where they angle park there,
He owns that?
yes,
That strip?
yeah,
Oh, interesting.
yeah,
That's very interesting.
yeah. Well, we own the street
Yeah.
coming down, the city owns Union, going down to the launch, but the parking area, he owns all.
You said to have a road out.
How much is right away?
Not much.
And if you rent your car topper by the Star, then you get right into that parking again. You have to drop your kayak or paddleboard and
Yeah.
good luck,
Yeah.
but that's an option. I mean,
It's part of it is, and that's a whole different topic, it's about parking, but I commend both communities for not succumbing to the overwhelming desire to build more parking, because you can wreck your communities real fast with that. As hard as it can be to park in Saugatuck, we always figure it out. And the reason Saugatuck and Douglas are such cool places is because you have the cool density downtown. And if you ever want to have the conversation, I can show you communities that have killed themselves by solving the parking problem.
Oh, that's nice. Where were you 2 months ago?
Too soon.
Yes, you see.
I'd be interested to know, because I just vote out of South Haven, how much dredging, because the municipal starts right off the pier. And then there's a lot of marinas that go, but they seem to have very, like sailboats that probably draft, what, 5, 6 feet? That go a fair amount.
We're actually working with them right now to get some dredging done in front, so I'll talk to Kate and figure out what's going on.
How big's on their dredging?
And ask Kate.
Yeah, that's what I mean, if we could help us out with that, we said.
Excellent, so I can do this for another hour, but, you probably-
I mean, there are a lot of things there. I guess so, you know, in the next meeting, we'll get that report, right, and should we have any sort of work that we should be doing through chair, after we get
I'm
this?
gonna send that out.
I'll send her, I'm gonna
get
get
all
all report to you right away.
Everybody should review it at the next meeting.
I'll email the report and I'm gonna summarize some key bullet points and try to go. Here's the stuff that's already in place, here's the long-term things, here's the short-term things, and here's like immediate steps. Fundamentally, I think anything that's gonna be based on generating any type of local funding that's not grant funding, that's, you know, in some way, any type of tax or assessment or anything like that, it's gonna have to come back and demonstrate the economic value to the entire community.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy for everybody else to go, well, I don't live on the lake and I'm not a marina, so it's not my problem. But if you're a business owner or you rely on anything, and that was the whole purpose of this, is it really went deep into that. And I think updating that would probably be a worthwhile exercise. And it's not a huge, it's not a crazy amount of money to do, so, but I'll demonstrate that for the next meeting. So.
And Greg, could you send us to the information on the December 2nd meeting?
Absolutely.
So we can make sure, yes.
Yeah, if somebody could just, if nothing else, to just sit in and introduce those, hey, we're. So,
Maybe if we could get one person from.
yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
Honestly, if you had one person go, like, I mean, and I made this someone my vote, we typically go to these meetings because it's what we do, and we do almost all of the marina work for the state, and so they know who we are, but, you know, I think the key would be, I think before making a big showing there, because what you'll find when you go to these meetings is many communities will show up and they're gonna make an ask. And so one of the asks is, one of the most common asks is, can we raise the rates at our marina? Because the state actually sets the rates for grant funded marinas. And they're gonna ask permission to move into a different category so they can increase their rates. And I always find it funny that they're reluctant to do that when everything I wrote in the facility assessment is 100% yes, let them increase their rates.
Yeah.
And I am a voter, so if anybody's in the public, you're gonna get upset with me, call me. We are not nearly as price sensitive as, we will certainly complain about it a lot. My sailboat is so beautiful, you should pay me to put my boat there, so you can enjoy the view of my boat. But truthfully, if my marina raised my slip rate $500 because we had to do a project to improve the thing, I'm gonna grumble and I'm gonna complain and I'm gonna write the check because there's 105 people on the waiting list who are dying for my slip. And so let's get real. It costs money to make these things happen, and it's completed. The thing I would ask you guys all to remember is governmental representatives of your communities, you're the stewards of all these resources for everybody. Right? And so you're obligated to care for these resources on behalf of the entire community, not just the voter, not just that one person who's using it. And it's very easy I spend a lot of time explaining to city council, some people, why they need to charge more for some of these amenities. Because they don't want to get yelled, and the voters will organize and will come and yell with our pitchforks and our torches and our tar and our feathers. And I've worked in communities where they're letting 150 or 200 people hold up, putting proper market rate costs to an amenity they're providing at the expense of 75,000 of the people in the community. Now, you're not that big, but it's the same thing is true. There's 3, 4, 5,000 people in whatever your communities. It's okay to tell us that you're using this amenity and we have to at least pay for what the market value is.
Yeah.
And that's fair. And when I'm put in a position to face voters and explain that to them, I've yet to have a voter explain to me in any rational way that they should somehow be subsidized for their recreational activity. You're already providing enough subsidy with all of the other things, the safety, the Coast Guard, the sheriff patrols, all of the stuff that you do. you know, when you're building a marina and you're creating that facility, you're creating those access sites, the boating access sites, the boat ramps. There's a cost to doing it, and it's fair to ask you to pay at least fair market value for the service. And I haven't heard anybody come up with a valid reason that that's not okay. So, you know, that's the money part's hard, and I get pretty good at talking about it because I'm not afraid to say it. Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Greg.
you, appreciate it.
Next up.
We have slides.
Oh, I did that, yeah, that. How do I make it so?
Nice slideshow, which is hidden.
Mhm.
Yeah. From the beginning.
Hey, I think the way to do it, so, oh, you see it, okay.
Yeah.
It's just me. It's on this screen.
It's usually me, so. Okay, well, thank you for having us this evening. Thank you for the invite. This is very timely. I actually learned a lot from your conversations, so this is great. So I'm Kelly Roach, and I work in development with ODC Network, so nonprofit just up the street here. And this is, I'm the original Kelly.
Yeah.
We have two Kellys tonight.
Yeah, Kelly Goward, I'm the Conservation Programs Director at the ODC. And we're gonna tag team, I'm gonna give some of the background and history, and then Kelly R, we'll talk more about the more recent efforts. I'm gonna start with a disclaimer though, I am pinch hitting tonight for Dan Callum, our Greenway Manager, who's been in this a lot longer than I have and can probably speak a lot better to it, so hopefully I do him justice tonight.
And most of you know Dan. Dan has two babies at home, one of which went to the ER yesterday, so she's okay. But it's a little shuffle there, so, okay.
Yeah, so we'll start with down to basics. So question for everybody in the room, how many of you are familiar with the ODC network? And what we do. So hopefully this will be mostly a review, but just want to get through this real quick. So we are a nonprofit organization and our mission is to advance outdoor education and conservation in West Michigan. And really our goal is to connect people, land, and nature by building a better community. And we do it in these various areas of protecting natural ecosystems, pioneering nature-based education, and providing outdoor access. So I'm not going to go over all of those things, but with the nature-based education, we run nature-based preschools where kids are outside every day. We have an education network that does mentoring with teachers in area schools to help them bring nature into their classrooms or bring kids outside where they are. We have a great program team that runs all kinds of school field trips out of the Outdoor Discovery Center, one of the nature centers that we operate. We also operate the DeGraff Nature Center. The logo's got to be updated on this map here. But that is more of a focus on adult community education on conservation and sustainability.
Yes, we just reopened that one, so if you haven't visited and you're in that area, stop by.
Yep, and that's where my team is located out of the DeGraff Nature Center. And we focus on more of the conservation. So within our protecting natural ecosystems, we focus on water quality in the Macatawa watershed, so not too far away. And then we have a conservation services team that has done some work in the KRG, Kalamazoo River Greenway communities, with habitat restoration, invasive species control. And then with the outdoor access, that's really kind of our bread and butter where the greenways fit into this. Although the greenways really fit through all of this. We protect those natural ecosystems to provide outdoor access and spaces for nature-based education. So on the next slide, I'm not going to read all of these numbers, but we have a large impact. Our reach is very far with the visitors that come to our spaces, with the kids that are in our programs, with the economic impact that we bring to the community. One thing that's not represented on that previous slide is these play and learn spaces. We have a team that builds these outdoor spaces that kind of rethinks how kids interact with their environment in a way that they take healthy risks, because they're interacting with natural elements. And there's a lot of research on this, and it's better places for them to play and learn in a safe, more cooperative environment, and it's hugely impactful.
And we have one as part of the bond from at Delmas Elementary. So if you haven't seen one, it's integrated with a traditional play space there.
And one was built in Pullman, with people helping people, so we definitely have representation in Allegan County of those facilities. And then here's kind of what our geographic footprint looks like. So on this map, we've got both of the greenways represented, but those bright green properties, those are facilities that we own and operate. So we've got some in the Macatawa River Greenway. You can see the Outdoor Discovery Center, like our main facility is highlighted there. We've got some properties that are wetland restoration, the Macatawa Mitigation Bank, Hyper's Drain Wetland. So those were more water quality flood storage projects that we've done. Redland Farm up on the north side, that's one of our newest properties where there's a bike park with trails and
Skills bike.
Yeah.
A mountain bike.
So
Which is kind of cool.
yeah, that's pretty cool. And then another thing that's highlighted on here that may be not as easy to see, there's a green line kind of going along in the Macatawa River. That's our Macatawa River Greenway. And I think I'll talk a little bit more about that. But then also want to highlight the darker green are our Greenway partners. So when we work in these greenway spaces, it's not just ODC. We are facilitating multiple communities coming together to meet similar goals. So all of those dark green properties are our partner properties. In the Macatawa River Greenway, that's represented by multiple townships and cities, and Ottawa County parks as well.
So would you say that those dark green parks are basically just open areas, parks, that type of thing? Or are there buildings there too?
There's a variety. Most of them are more like natural in terms of trail systems. Some of them have like bathroom buildings, but that's really about it. I mean, there are some within like the city of Holland that are a little more improved with like pavilions, things like that. So I would say it's kind of across the board, a variety of conditions at those various parks, just depending on the owner of the park and how they developed it.
Thank you.
But really the goal with the Macatawa River Greenway, which we'll talk about briefly here, is to connect a pathway. We want people to be able to walk, ride their bike, skateboard, whatever their preferred non-motorized means of transportation is along the river, from all the way from the headwaters to Lake Michigan, to have a pathway that's connected along that river corridor. So the origins of the Macatawa River Greenway were not with the ODC network. It was formed in 1996 with a group of communities in the Macatawa area, and formed as a nonprofit, an independent nonprofit organization. And really their goal was to create a pathway, a corridor along the river that would protect that river corridor, but connect it with pathway, so that people could, bike, walk, run, whatever, along the entire length of the Macatawa River. And then certainly looking at how can that trail be connected with other regional trails into Grand Rapids and maybe even up to Muskegon. And so again, it really started with the 2 cities, 5 townships, was run as a nonprofit before, early on. And for various reasons, that nonprofit merged with the ODC network in 2009, primarily financial reasons to reduce that overhead. And that is when Dan Callum, he took over the program shortly after there. It was for a few years without Dan while he was finishing college and all that. He came on board ODC in 2012. So Dan has been with the Greenway at the ODC almost from the beginning, and we are at the point with the Macatawa River Greenway, where that greenway corridor is almost fully established. There's like one little section where we're still working on establishing easements to be able to get that trail. If you remember back to the map, some of that Macatawa River Greenway trail doesn't go right along the river. So we're hoping to address some of that. But there's that middle Macatawa, that kind of big bright green area. That trail is being connected, and then you'll be able to go all the way from that upper Macatawa where it says Zealand Charter Township. And then there's one more little gap in there that we have to close, but we're getting to the point where we're just about ready to reach that goal with the Macatawa River.
And that's the portion that we toured 2 weeks ago. So we did a short tour of the Macatawa River Greenway with some of the stakeholders for the Kalamazoo River Greenway, just to really generate ideas and to see a greenway in a more complete condition, so that we could sort of spark curiosity about what could be possible here, so.
Yeah, and then I think I'm gonna talk this real quick, and then I'm gonna turn things over to
Sure.
Kelly. So again, the Kalamazoo River Greenway started a little bit later, and this was before my time, but definitely Dan managed this process. And it really starts with the community members coming together and brainstorming, right? Creating a vision for like, what are you interested in doing? What are the concerns of the community? What are the needs of the community? So there was a series of conversations that were had all along the Kalamazoo River in Allegan County. So that really is our geographic focus with the Kalamazoo River Greenway, is Allegan County. Because the Kalamazoo River is really big. And we are, we are a large nonprofit organization, but I work with a team of 6 people, so we don't have a huge capacity right now to work beyond Allegan County. So there was a series of stakeholder groups throughout the river corridor in Allegan County, kind of clustered around the city. So Allegan, Plainville, Otsego, the Tri-Cities here. And so the plan document itself is divided into those kind of geographic regions.
That kind of spells it out.
Yeah, and so the plan was put together based on this public input, and kind of almost a separate little plan for each section, but all around those same kind of driving goals of environmental restoration, recreation, conservation. So it was a fairly robust process where 300 people were engaged over a process of 15 months. And then it was, unanimously adopted by all of the municipalities that participated. And so that was, about 5 or 6 years ago.
So as Kelly said, the Macatawa River Greenway was really to create a non-motorized corridor. So the mission statement for the Kalamazoo River Greenway is to implement a greenway corridor along the Kalamazoo River, addressing environmental restoration, recreation, conservation, and education. So not so clearly defined, which I think is kind of interesting, because obviously we do have a very different space here. And then what I always like to point out is that this includes river, green space, trails, the connectivity of those things, infrastructure, and access. Because again, I was, new coming in, I don't come from the science background of this. And so how do you define the greenway, right? And so really it can be defined by the stakeholders in the community of what's most important to them. So I like to point that out. So like Kelly shared, so on the original plan, it was broken into 7 different sort of communities, and this just gives you an overview of what that looks like with the watershed. And then in each of those 7 communities, these were the key components that they were asking those stakeholders to look at. So, we're looking at green stormwater practices, education, how do we remove sediment, like the conversation today, facility improvements, and then how do we maintain that quality habitat, right? So we continue to sort of balance development and green space. So these are the things they were asked to consider in that. And then I threw this slide in here because I know many of you are very involved in a lot of different things in the community, and we just redid the 5-year parks plan last year. And so a group of, the steering committee got together, and this was the vision that was put out there that we had said, okay, how does this really embrace what we want as a tri-community? And it really overlays with exactly what we're trying to do with the Kalamazoo River Greenway, right? So this is interlocal collaboration, just like this conversation tonight, improve connectivity in multifaceted ways, nurture existing green space and look at others, conservation, environmental stewardship, and then fostering community well-being. How can we make this the best place to live and have the best quality of life, right?
Can I ask a question?
Sure thing.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go back to the areas that are covered.
Yep.
There, one of the things one of the things in 2016 was, one of the main ones was to stop the sediment coming from downstream. Or coming upstream. And the Rabbit River was one of the worst ones.
Exactly.
Is that working? I mean, here seems like a huge group to stop that or to help.
Yeah, the idea was to work with the ag and just recognize that the huge source of non-point source sediment and those sorts of things, and how do you work with agriculture to create appropriate buffer zones for water quality and all that.
So something like that would seem to me to be a great jumping point for a grant. I mean, if you've got a group this powerful,
Yeah.
you know, looking at downstream sediment.
And we have the plan that can demonstrate that. The result of all of that is, what's happened is we've taken the cost of managing that sediment that's being created upstream and sent it to have that cost be handled by this community.
Yep. Yeah, we're the recipients of all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, so to your point, that's one of the things that we're looking at with this invasive species grant as well, is how can we do best management practices with ag? And that is something that Kelly and Dan could talk about. And something that we visited when we did our tour of the Macatawa River Greenway, because they have about 80% of the agriculture under best management practices, so. Putting in the 2 state ditches and, you know, just what to kind of an untrained eye looks like simplistic choices. But then when you hear the background of why they're doing the things that they're doing, it actually is sort of this aha moment of like, why are we all doing this, right?
And it's a large undertaking.
Yeah.
Too, because we worked over a period of 10 years in the Macatawa watershed, which is probably half the size of the Rabbit.
Yeah.
A much smaller area, and we're able to get, 65 farms to put conservation on over 10,000 acres of land, and it made significant improvements. It's not 100% of where Lake Macatawa needs to be, but it was a huge undertaking. It was lots of partners, the Rabbit River watershed, the Allegan Conservation District. They do work with farmers and provide technical assistance. I think they're working right now in the Gun River watershed and also working on updating the Rabbit River watershed management plan, which is really a super important document to help leverage grants, and needs to be approved by the state and the EPA, and kind of opens up access to some of that funding. And so we work a lot with the conservation districts, as we just don't have the staff to be able to dedicate time to working with farmers. You have to spend a lot of time with farmers and build trust. And the conservation district already has that. I mean, it took us a while to build trust with farmers in the Macatawa watershed, because we found the right people that the farmers knew and had the time to spend and go work with them on their farms. So that's something we certainly are interested in doing and helping facilitate, and would be happy to brainstorm more about how we can get
That was
some.
one of the first roadblocks we ran into,
Yeah.
was getting the farmers to even look at it. So this is a huge step forward.
Yeah, and it was actually part of the conversation that we had when we got the group together for the Macatawa River Greenway tour, because the conservation district was represented there. So they are a stakeholder with Kalamazoo River Greenway. They'll be at our quarterly meetings, and they talked about which areas they do have these relationships already, and what does that look like moving forward, right?
And they were all there when we did the 2016, so it'll be interesting for you guys to read that and then to see what's changed now.
Okay, so what have we done, historically in the Kalamazoo River Greenway? So I think what's amazing is that everybody is working really hard, but what's really cool is with the KOG is like, now we can work together. We can create efficiencies, we can hear about other projects that maybe we're all very busy, everybody's wearing a lot of hats that we don't get to hear about as often. So this is something that came up with the original stakeholder meeting that we hosted back in April, when we reached out to some people in the community saying, hey, do we want to re-up putting some energy behind the KOG? And this is not meant to be completely inclusive. These are just things that were shared at the time, that were shared at that meeting, so we can say, hey, there's a lot of great work already going on in this area. And then ODC's contributed to the KOG. So you saw on that map that we've got 2 properties that we own, that's 400 plus acres. If you haven't been out there, it's beautiful right now. So now's your time, and it will be very quiet. And then, again, we don't need to get into the numbers, but there's all kinds of educational programs and conservation and ecological study going on already. And then you mentioned, sediment flowing, right? Okay, so up the other way, up the Kalamazoo, obviously there's the dams that are in place, and that is aging infrastructure. And so that has been a question of, okay, what's gonna happen with that? There's been talks with each of the, some of those cities, okay, do we want to take those out? What would that look like? And obviously that is something that's a major concern for our community, because again, like we shared, we're the recipients of any of those choices. And so just recently, you guys probably saw, they just put out a press release that Consumers Energy sold those dams to Confluence Hydro. And I wanted to share tonight, so there'll be a meeting coming up on November 19th. Because Dan Kellum has been so engaged, he's actually going, I think it's called a prosperity group or something. So again, it's like a stakeholder group that's been together for a while. So he'll be at that meeting as well as some other representation from ODC. So we're happy to share that back. There's also an evening community event. I think it's like 6 to 7 o'clock. So I'm happy to send that out if anybody is interested in getting more information on that.
Is that in Elegant?
Yeah, and the
Okay.
county building.
Yeah, and then again, I won't spend a ton of time on this, but like with getting these partners back together. So we have the 3 municipalities in the tri-community, Fenville is also part of this, and then the Rotary, because as you probably know, one of their sort of levers that they want to invest in the community is the environment and education. So this really goes hand in hand. So these are just things that bubbled up in terms of interest of like, okay, if we want to get things done with this plan, what would we like to see here? So getting people to talk and communicate, like getting the good work that we're already doing out there in the community so people can say, hey, we're lucky to live here, lots is going on. I want to engage too. Boat launch maintenance, I mean, that's something that came up tonight. Grants, I mean, that's something, we have 2 grant writers in-house at ODC, so that's a really nice thing to have available to us. Trail connectivity, river cleanups, I mean, all of this stuff, green stormwater management. And then what have we accomplished so far? So this was passed by the municipalities. Everybody sort of came on board by July. So it's sort of a fiscal July 1. And now this is our first meeting with partners, and then stakeholders were added, voices that we wanted represented, like the Elegant Conservation District, like Kalamazoo River Watershed Council, different nonprofits that are engaging with the river and the green space as well. So we've had meetings, we're all talking. We started a water trail working group, and I know, Dick, that was one of the things that bubbled up that you want us to come and talk about tonight, of like what's happening with that. We have been looking at grants, and thank you for sending them over. I know this group over here is actively always looking at that, and if things come up on your end as well, please send it our way. And then we posted some events already. So we've had Rabbit River educational hikes. That was looking at identifying invasive species. We had a really fun environmental stewardship day with the 8th graders out at Saugatuck Wilds. We had our stakeholders out, like I shared, from McIntyre River Greenway education to look at what it looks like to have a more complete greenway. We have a water smart landscaping educational event going on, and then we're actively planning everything that's going to go on for 2026. And then the water trail. So there's really not too much to report on at this point. This was just something that really came to the top, is people were very interested in like, what would that look like for our community? And so at this point, it's in its infant stage, we're just doing data collection. So we've established a working group to just dig in and really look at other communities that have already done this. And we've identified 2 that are noted there. So there's Elbro, and then we popped on a DNR water trail group. So the state of Michigan obviously has a ton of waterways, and there's, I think, like 7 or 8 that have already gotten national designations, and then many more that have state designations. So there's some that have already done the work, right? And so we're looking at it like, what can we garner from them to say, is this a fit or not for our community? So we're looking at their development plans. They've handed over MOUs, so that's how they've moved forward with, because obviously they don't own the sites, so everything would be something that's owned by the municipalities. So we would work with municipalities and determine what would be the best use of those spaces. And then really we want feedback from the community. So we've had some stakeholders, obviously, that have given feedback, but the next step really would be to get more feedback, just like tonight, to say, okay, the parking piece did not come up. So that's valuable feedback. So that's what we have to share at this point. I think the working group will probably become a monthly thing in order to figure out what that looks like. So Questions on that?
Digesting.
Yeah. All right, any questions on anything else?
I got a quick question.
Yeah.
With, our area, there's a number of people that fish. And the water level's gone down tremendously. There's actually a big fish die-off in July. And I called the DNR and they're investigating. Do you guys get involved as far as, I didn't see anything about fishing along the trails. And do you guys, have you looked at that? Is that something?
As far as the health of it?
plan? Yeah. And/or, you know, with these trails, can you put you know, a little, you know, fishing, that people can, you know, fish off of that too as well.
I'll let you speak to, you know, what you guys have done to monitor in the Macatawa.
Right, so with, yeah, the work that we've done in the Macatawa River and that could translate to Kalamazoo is really more like chemical monitoring, like we do basic water chemistry. We're not really actively looking at fish. When we have issues with fish in Lake Macatawa, we call the DNR too. But really the work that we are doing in the Macatawa watershed is all to protect habitat. Reducing that sediment is protecting habitat. When you start talking about the health of fish, that's a completely different issue. But yeah, we had, was it catfish that were dying in July?
Oh, yeah, we counted probably almost 100 and then.
Yeah.
Depending on where it would go off, they were on the beaches.
Yeah, because when I talked to the DNR, yeah, because we've been working pretty closely with Matt Diana, who covers Allegheny County.
Yeah.
And I think he came up to Lake Macatawa too. They figured it was botulism, which there's nothing like that happened. It's natural. It just, the conditions were right. And, you know, and we've had, the viral hemorrhagic VHS, I can't remember what it stands for, but we had that in the fish in Lake Mac, which again was like nothing having to do with water quality. So like fish just have issues that have nothing to do with water quality. And if there is like a fish killed because of water quality, it's usually a one-off. Like there's like a chemical spill or like a manure spill if you're in more of an agricultural area. But yeah, we don't really do things directly with fish other than we're trying to work toward protecting and improving habitat for fish. So yeah, so DNR would be really the go-to for any fish issues. But I think there's definitely a complementary use for having fish like access at boating access.
Yeah,
Because that's where a lot of fishing
Yeah.
happens on Lake Mac too.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
on any day, there can be, you know, all types of different boats out there,
Mhm.
you know, fishing, and I'm thinking about catfish. I watch these nature shows where they're swimming in like muck, you know, and why are they dying? You know, I mean, it was a huge die-off. It was just.
Yeah.
It was-
Yeah, and I mean, if there is interest in kind of taking a closer look at that, we do have like the Grand Valley Innis Water Resources Institute that does some actual sampling and monitoring of fish populations in Lake Macatawa. I mean, we pay for that, so, you know, somebody would need to pay their team to come down and do like sampling. I mean, what they're doing more is just kind of population dynamics. Again, they're not really looking at the health of the fish. But that sampling could identify that if there are potential problems, or like instances of, say, like invasive fish species that might be out competing native fish. I mean, there's some options to look at if you want to take a deeper dive into like getting a characterization of the fish of the Kalamazoo River. Or, you know, again, it would really be DNR to talk to if there's any health concerns.
Yeah, from a recreation perspective, there's a lot of people that come, I mean, even in our condo complex, they fish off the, you know, our lake wall. And,
Yeah.
if there's no fish, after July, they all disappeared.
Yeah, and I think that's another great opportunity for like a public education program too.
Yeah.
There's some great, Michigan Sea Grant has got some great information about fish and fishing, and we'll do fishing programs and just raising the awareness of, you know, the recreational activity, but like food safety too, and how to properly prepare fish, like the Department of So Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has great educational information. We put up signage on Lake Macatawa to promote like eating healthy fish and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of educational pathways we could certainly take around fish and fish health and. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Billy, and yes, thanks for coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here's what. And so it was one, he thinks it was one of two things. One, it had been. Anyway, from the
Milfoil.
And the other thing is, it was so cold in June, remember in July, it just flipped. And so they were, I'm gonna contact him, they said they were gonna try to get some sampling, because that was second year of, in a row, and he said it just wasn't Kalamazoo, it was like Mac. It was a few other things and stuff, this is just.
Yeah, we were talking about birds dying off too, remember we had the big bird die off.
Oh, yeah, and earlier in the spring, didn't it?
Yeah, it sure did, they were everywhere.
Yeah.
In parks, by the beaches, we heard about that. Mhm. And I.
Okay, thank you,
That had
everyone.
something
Thank you.
connected to it, but I can't recall what.
I'm not making no contact that gentleman.
Brian, you had included in the bylaws, is there anything you wanted us to do about that?
Yeah, I think at your last meeting, you discussed, you wanted to kind of review them, and then, you as board wanted to talk more about, your board member roles and taking a more active role in planning for certain meetings, and taking minutes and those sorts of things, so, it's probably better for you'd have a quorum, so you guys have a further discussion on that, so we can include that next time and pick that up.
Okay.
And we're gonna be transferring over to Saugatuck next time?
Yeah, more than welcome to, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I'll talk next month.
Yep. Not, it's a beautiful space, but not as modern as.
So Douglas or the, now Douglas or the.
Yeah.
I'll still make sure you're taken care of, so.
How do we set up the next meeting?
That's an excellent question. I think we should shoot for, I forget what we were on, was it the second Tuesday, the other
Yeah,
day?
second Tuesday.
I think maybe we start there and then see if people can make it. The thing I would do is see when Greg is available.
Greg, is that what the building?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
So it's on.
Did he say
in
that was
December then?
December 2nd.
That's.
That's the first Tuesday, and then I go to second Tuesday.
Of November.
Yeah, of December. Well, the second Tuesday is done today.
That's not gonna work.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
we're
that's,
open, but.
he's gonna.
Oh, you're open?
Mhm.
Second Tuesday is what?
Veterans Day in November.
Would be the what? Or do we make, we'll go to December?
December and give time for
We had
everybody.
so much fun, you came back.
I think it's come back, I'm moving to the next day.
That's what we're talking about.
But I think if we do December 9th, that would give.
I should be around that week, yeah.
Yeah.
That would be after the meeting then, the
Yeah.
December second meeting.
Yeah, so that would be,
That would be a good time
yeah,
to have it.
get a lot more information back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would work.
Then, cool. Super nice. So you saw a good talk.
I've already sent the DNR waterways meeting and that study to Dana, so he's got it, so it should be in your inbox and you can send it around.
Right, I'm gonna forward it to you.
This was the 2016.
Yes, yeah, you've seen it somewhere, but.
If you'd like to have the hand. Autograph it. I was there.
We spent a lot of quality time in that.
We did, we spent a lot of time there. I remember at the time, DNR just slapped us down every single thing we came up with. They didn't want us to do anything, but you couldn't build the huts in the middle of the.
More DEQ,
What was it,
and you'll see in the study, it still says DEQ, so this is before
Oh, yeah.
the rebrand.
Before, yeah.
It's
Water crisis, we'll rebrand.
Yeah.
So behavioral, but anyway. I guess that's it.
Yeah, see you all on December.
It wasn't a meeting, but it was a meeting.
Yeah. That's a good compliment.
I wasn't a lot of-
Yeah.
Will that be someone else?
This could be the city of Saugatuck.
City Hall.
Oh, it's sitting upstairs.
Mhm.
I love that room. It's a great spot.
Three courses. Thanks, Nick.
So, do you want my name, my non-friend parking?